September 1942. A rail yard outside Leningrad. The flat cars groan under a weight no German rail flat car was designed to carry. Workers in field gray stand back, not because they've been ordered to, but because something about the machine in front of them demands distance. It is broader than anything they have seen before. So wide that it cannot be moved by rail without removing its outer road wheels and swapping its combat tracks for narrower transport tracks, a process that takes a trained crew the better part of a day. Even stripped down for transit, it barely clears the loading gauge of the German rail network, and there are tunnels between Berlin and the front that it passes through with centimeters to spare on either side. The machine is called the Tiger. Its full designation is Panzerkampfwagen 6 Ausführung E, but no one calls it that. The crews who will live inside it and the men who will die in front of it will call it simply the Tiger, and the name will carry weight long after the war is over. It weighs 57 tons. Its hull armor at the front is 100 millimeters thick. Sloped armor had not yet become doctrine, so this is a flat plate, a wall of steel that confidence built. The main gun is the 8.8 centimeter KWK-36, derived from the famous anti-aircraft cannon that German gunners had been using to kill British tanks in the western desert since 1941. It can penetrate 100 millimeters of vertical armor at 1,000 meters. At combat ranges, there is almost nothing it cannot kill. But standing in the rail yard at Leningrad in September 1942, something is already wrong. The Tiger is late. It was rushed to the front before its mechanical problems were resolved, before its crews were trained, before anyone had figured out what it actually cost to keep one running. The schedules said it would be ready. The schedules were wrong. The most powerful tank Germany had ever built was going to war before it was ready. That is the story of the Tiger. To understand why the Tiger existed, you need to understand what happened to Germany's tank crews in the summer of 1941. Operation Barbarossa opened with stunning success, but as the Wehrmacht drove east, it encountered Soviet tanks that its standard weapons simply could not kill. The T-34 was a shock. The KV-1 was worse. German anti-tank guns that had been effective against Polish and French armor bounced off the KV-1's hull at combat ranges. German tank crews reported firing round after round into KV-1s and watching the rounds deflect. One documented incident from Army Group North described a single KV-1 stopping an entire German column for several hours, absorbing hit after hit, before it was finally destroyed at close range. The message that reached Berlin was blunt. Germany needed a heavier tank. The project that produced the Tiger had actually begun before Barbarossa. In 1937, Henschel und Sohn in Kassel had been asked to develop a heavy breakthrough tank. Porsche had also submitted a competing design. The requirements evolved repeatedly over the following years, each revision adding weight, armor, and firepower. By the time the final specification was issued in 1941, the tank that would result from it had grown far beyond original estimates. The decision to use the 8.8 centimeter gun rather than a shorter, lighter weapon locked in the vehicle's size and weight in a way that could not be undone. Adolf Hitler personally reviewed the design in May 1941 and approved the 8.8 centimeter armament. That single decision defined everything else. Henschel won the production contract. The first Tiger I rolled off the assembly line at Kassel in April 1942. Production never reached high volume. Henschel built the Tiger one by hand, essentially with the kind of precision that was necessary given its tolerances and complexity. In the entire war, Germany produced only 1,347 Tiger Is. For comparison, the Soviet Union produced more than 57,000 T-34s in all variants. The United States built nearly 50,000 M4 Shermans. The Tiger was never a weapon of mass production. It was a weapon of quality, deployed in small numbers, expected to achieve results through superiority rather than volume. By August 1942, the first combat-ready Tigers were being loaded onto flat cars in Kassel and shipped east. By the time they reached the Leningrad front, the crews who would operate them had received less training than the designers had specified. The high command was impatient. The Tiger was ready enough. It would have to do. What the Tiger was, mechanically, was a contradiction. Everything about its design was built around the gun, and the gun was extraordinary. The 8.8 centimeter KWK-36 could destroy a T-34 at ranges exceeding 1,500 meters, ranges at which the T-34's own 76mm gun struggled to penetrate the Tiger's frontal armor. In the hands of a trained crew, the Tiger could engage and destroy Soviet tanks before those tanks even knew they were in danger. That asymmetry was not accidental. It was the entire point. The armor reflected the same philosophy of excess. The frontal hull plate at 100 millimeters and the turret front at 100 millimeters were impervious to most Allied anti-tank weapons at standard engagement ranges. The side armor at 80 millimeters was thinner, but still substantially heavier than anything the Soviets or British fielded on their medium tanks. You could not kill a Tiger from the front with a Sherman or a T-34 at normal battle ranges. You had to go around it, flank it, get close, and the Tiger's crew had 360 degrees of observation equipment and a gun that would find you before you found them. The engine was a Maybach HL230P45, producing 700 horsepower. The same Maybach engine family that powered the Panther and the King Tiger. 700 horsepower sounds substantial until you remember that the engine was moving 57 tons of steel. Top speed on road was approximately 38 kilometers per hour, but sustained cross-country speed was considerably lower, and the transmission, a semi-automatic Maybach Olvar gearbox, was not always reliable under the stresses of combat conditions. The Tiger consumed fuel at a rate that became one of its most significant operational weaknesses, and its range was limited enough that logistics planning for Tiger units was a specialized discipline. The Tiger's great rival in the East was not the T-34, but rather the problems it created for every bridge between the front and the rear. At 57 tons, it exceeded the load rating of most military bridges the Wehrmacht used. Tiger units required engineer support simply to move. Roads that would support a column of Panzer IVs would not support a Tiger. In winter, the wide combat tracks helped distribute weight over snow, but the same tracks that made the Tiger manageable in snow made it impossible to transport without the time-consuming track swap. The machine was formidable in the position it was standing. Getting it to that position was the problem. Before we get to where the Tiger actually fought, if this kind of deep history is what you come here for, hit subscribe. It takes about 2 seconds, it costs nothing, and it helps this channel keep telling the stories of the machines that defined the last century of warfare. The ones that worked, the ones that didn't, and the ones that changed everything in between. The Tiger's first combat action was a disaster. and it had nothing to do with the enemy. On September 22, 1942, 4 Tiger Is of the 502nd Heavy Panzer Battalion were committed to action near Leningrad against Soviet positions at Maga. The terrain was swampy. The ground that looked solid from aerial reconnaissance was not solid under 57 tons. Tigers bogged. Tigers broke down. One was hit by Soviet anti-tank fire and disabled. The engagement demonstrated almost none of the Tiger's strengths and all of its weaknesses. The machine required firm ground, trained crews, and time, none of which were present at Maga. General der Panzertruppe Erich Brandenberger, commanding in the sector, reportedly stated afterward that the Tigers had been committed in terrain and conditions entirely unsuited to their capabilities. He was correct. The OKH had demanded action before the vehicles or their crews were ready, and the result was a squandered debut. The Tiger needed better ground and a better battle. It found both in Tunisia. By December 1942, Tiger Is of the 501st Heavy Panzer Battalion were arriving in North Africa, rushed west to meet the Allied landings of Operation Torch. Tunisia was exactly the environment where the Tiger's qualities mattered. Firm ground, long sight lines, open terrain, where the 8.8-centimeter gun could reach out to ranges that made Allied armor desperately vulnerable. In January 1943, near Teburba, Tigers engaged British Valentine and Crusader tanks at distances beyond 1,500 meters. The results were one-sided. British tank crews reported watching their rounds strike Tiger hulls and fall away. Lieutenant Colonel Rudolf Gerhardt, commanding Tiger elements in the sector, described engagements where single Tigers held off entire squadrons of Allied armor. Sergeant Major Albert Biber, commanding a Tiger in one engagement near the Useltia Valley, reportedly destroyed 7 Allied tanks in a single action before withdrawing under orders when ammunition ran low. He was 23 years old. Tunisia also produced the first genuine test of the Tiger against American forces. At the Kasserine Pass in February 1943, American M3 Lee and M4 Sherman tanks encountered Tigers for the first time. The M4 Sherman's 75mm gun could not reliably penetrate the Tiger's frontal armor at standard engagement ranges. American commanders, receiving after-action reports that their standard tank could not kill the primary German heavy tank in a frontal engagement, immediately began requesting a longer-barreled 76mm gun. The Tiger had, in its first serious engagement against American forces, already changed American armor procurement policy. Tunisia ended in May 1943 with the surrender of Axis forces in North Africa. The Tigers that had fought there were lost. There was no evacuation of armor, but the reputation they built in those 5 months traveled ahead of them. The Eastern Front in the summer of 1943 was where the Tiger found its most extreme test, and where the name of one man became permanently attached to the machine. SS Hauptsturmführer Michael Wittmann had joined the Waffen-SS before the war and commanded Tiger Is with the 1st SS Panzer Division, Leibstandarte, SS Adolf Hitler. On the Kursk salient in July 1943, during Operation Citadel, Wittmann's Tiger claimed multiple Soviet tank kills in a single day. The numbers from his service record, verified by German kill confirmation processes, though historians note those processes had flaws, eventually totaled over 130 Soviet tanks destroyed. Whether every figure is precisely accurate, the operational reality is not seriously contested. The Tiger, in skilled hands, on favorable terrain, was capable of a lethality that was genuinely disproportionate to the numbers fielded. The engagement that defined the tiger's legend in the West came not in Russia, but in a Norman village on June 13, 1944. At Villers-Bocage, Wittmann, now commanding a tiger with the 101st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion, encountered the British 7th Armored Division, the Desert Rats, moving through the village in a column. What happened next is one of the most documented and debated armor engagements of the war. Wittmann's Tiger, operating initially without infantry support, drove into the column and destroyed multiple British Cromwell tanks and armored vehicles along a stretch of road in a matter of minutes. The British column was halted. The advance was stopped. 4 British tanks and a number of half-tracks were confirmed destroyed in the initial action. The engagement at Villers-Bocage did not change the outcome of the Normandy campaign, but it demonstrated what a single tiger in the right position could do to a formation that was not prepared for it. Wittmann was killed in action on August 8, 1944, near Saint-Aignan-de-Craménil. He was 30 years old. By the end of the war, German records indicated that a single Tiger I, on average, required the destruction of roughly 5 to 10 Allied or Soviet tanks before it was itself put out of action. Figures that historians have noted are difficult to verify precisely, but reflect the qualitative imbalance that Allied commanders encountered repeatedly. Against that single statistic must be placed the other one. Germany built 1,347 Tigers. The Soviet Union built 57,000 T-34s. In a war decided by industrial capacity as much as tactical excellence, the Tiger's kill ratio, however impressive, could not compensate for the arithmetic of production. September 1942. A rail yard outside Leningrad. The flat cars groan. The workers step back. The machine is there, and it is everything its designers promised, and it is already running late, already fighting a logistics chain that was never built for something this heavy, already demanding more of its crews and its infrastructure than Germany could sustainably provide. The Tiger won battles. It won engagements that should not have been winnable. It destroyed tanks by the hundreds, sometimes at ranges and under conditions that made its opponents feel the engagement was never fair. The crews who fought in it often believed they were invincible, and for specific moments in specific places, they were close to right. But the Tiger was not built for a long war. It was not built for a war of attrition against industrial powers that could replace every tank it destroyed with 3 more. It was not built for mud, for boggy ground, for roads that could not hold its weight, for supply lines that could not keep pace with its consumption. It was built to win engagements, and it did. It was not built to win a war of 57 million dead fought on a front stretching from Norway to the Sahara. The machines that won that war were lighter, simpler, cheaper, and built in numbers that no level of tactical excellence could overcome. The Tiger knew how to kill. History already knew what that was worth.